How's everybody doing? I'm just checking, finishing it set up. I can only kind of finish doing it while I'm live. So, give me just a second. I'm trying to make sure that people can see it and it doesn't look bad. So, as you can see, we're going to be working on this. This is going to be part 3 of the build that I got going on. Hopefully that's a little bit better. Because I've talked to a few people that watched them and they're saying that I was getting kind of close to me. So hopefully you'll still be able to see kind of what I'm doing. And also they said that the sound wasn't very good. And so I do have a Bluetooth, but I don't know if it's going to be picking up the audio or if it's just going to be my phone. Yes, I do use my phone for doing my live streams and actually for recording the majority of my videos as well. Come on, thank you. Okay. So hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I sound really muffled. So I'm going to turn off the Bluetooth, see if that helps any. You guys hear me any better, or does that make any difference? Doesn't sound so muffled, so I will try going with that, and I will just try to talk a bit louder. So as you can see, this is the Fox that we're going to be working on, and at this point, we are going to start working on assembling some of the suspension on it. I thought I could do that without a mouse pad, but that ain't going to work. So let me get it pulled. Because I have a manual that I use on the computer, but then I do also have the manual that I can look in physically. Because the computer, I can get it nice and bigger, but there's certain adjustments like links and stuff like that that the actual manual will have the correct sizes that they need to be. And so like right here, I know this is upside down, but right here it's showing how long these steering links need to be exactly to get it to be correct, because there's nothing on the shaft to be able to adjust them. So when you're initially assembling, it's going to be good to use those and to do it that way. So let me did that. So I am right there. All right, so right now we are at step 11. And so it looks like it's going to be starting to assemble, I believe, the front wheel hubs is what it's looking like. And it looks like it's going to be assembling those and then getting them attached to the suspension arms. And that. So let's jump in. Okay, so part tree B, this one's part F. So, and then as you guys can see, I have a multi-thing tray. It definitely helps to keep things organized, because like I have all the parts A bag in here. You can see it, all the parts A, B is there. This is going to have part C. And then I did D here, and then the other is just holding the extra small parts. So, D. Those are just the arms. So yeah, that's right. F1. And something I've learned over time is when you have parts that are on these trees, be careful when you try to twist them, because sometimes if the part is kind of thin or skinny, it could actually twist the part and it might not do it where you're needing it to be. So that's just kind of a heads up, and be careful. YouTube popped an ad up, and so it messed up my live stream. So hopefully it's back going again. Reload my page just so I can make sure. Okay, there we go. Hopefully it will clear up, because I know it can do better quality. That's better. Okay, now back to it. So yeah, I'm going to assume that these are going to be wheel hubs. Looking at the directions, it looks like they're going to be ones for steering. So got some pins and stuff in there. We might be using some of those. Screws. So in the directions, so far I'm actually really liking these directions from Tamiya. I believe it's telling me that I'm going to be needing part bag B for the next several steps. So that's kind of a nice notification. Should be that. Tamiya tools. Actually, that's pretty good. They actually, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but they actually say that it's a 5 and, or a 5.5 and a 6 millimeter, I'm assuming. So that's actually kind of neat. A couple of Allen wrenches, some reinforcement metal pieces. I don't know what oh, that's a notification. Okay, F6. I'm assuming that's not you. F6. Okay. And actually, if you're not able to use something sharp to clean up the little bit of extra, don't take it from your wife or girlfriend or mom, but a nail file can work really good. And so you can just kind of sand it down and actually get it quite nice and quite smooth. It almost does better than the razor does. But personally, I kind of like the razor just because it's a bit faster. So I hope those of you that are assembling other RC cars, post up what you're assembling, what you're building, so I can see what you're doing and see what you guys are working on right now. Be kind of neat to see how many people are building an RC car right now all over the place, all over the world. Okay, so those all feel good. That back in the box, so I don't have to worry about it cutting me. And looks like we're going to be using that, maybe 8mm. I guess that's that one. Micrometer back out. Definitely a worthwhile tool. So that's the ball. Lay some of this out to be a little bit organized. Oh, I'm going to guess those might be the shock shafts. Maybe, I don't know. Shorties. Of course, then again, I think this is going to end up being the smallest RC car that I'm building, that I have. So, all right. B10. A lot of people might think it might be a little overboard organizing really deep, but it tends to make it so that it's a little bit faster, a little bit easier, and you don't miss anything either. So it can be a good, handy thing to do. It doesn't necessarily have to be super organized, but more so than what it was. All right. See, a 3mm washer. That's not 3mm that way. That's a lot more than 3 that way. So I guess it's going to be you. Off of there. Washer's on the screw sideways, so it doesn't want to come off. There we go. Little tiny lock nuts. Alrighty. So, first thing, take one of these. Now, I don't know. Okay. For this excuse me, for this particular model, these are directional as to which side they go on. So keep an eye out for that. That goes through like that. I'll figure, got people texting me. I just flubbed on that one, but good thing I notice it now. There we go. That looks much better. That. Now our handy dandy little cross wrench. Okay, and I was able to tighten that down literally until it stopped. So that should be nice and tight. Okay, so BB-8, 8mm. Yes, I said BB-8. No, I'm not talking about the Star Wars droid. Alright, so I'm going to have one of you. We're going to go down. One of you, and your dimples go up. Like that. And then you go through like that. And I can start to screw you in. Right. And, hang on. Let me try to get rid of that notification. I turned do not disturb, so hopefully it won't come up anymore. We'll find out. Okay, so I'm going to be the same thing on the other side. That all goes through. Screw that one in. Something like that. And then I believe these sections are going to attach to the arm, so that's going to give this flexibility and movement for the suspension. And that way, see on the bottom, middle. Now, something else that can kind of help, this is another little tip trick, is when you're trying to thread a piece like this into plastic and it's kind of flat and hard to get started, if you get a body reamer, and these can be very dangerous, so please be careful, use the body reamer and do it just a few times in there because it will go and make kind of a guide to guide the piece in to make it easier to thread. So just like that. Now on these black pieces that are in here, there is a small little dimple on them. And looking at the instructions, you do have to kind of put it in a certain way, and it might be pointing a certain direction once the arms are attached. So, all right. But from what I'm seeing, that looks like I want to say the left side front wheel hub. So now we can go off and do the other one. So stick that in. That really thick washer. Lock nut. I hope you guys kind of enjoy this because I'm enjoying it, and I see a bunch of other RC channels and they do awesome in that, but they always edit out everything they go through, the kind of the hiccups or the troubles that they go through, and I mean all of them do it that I've seen, and so it winds up being condensed down. So it's like it takes in reality 5, 6, 7 hours to assemble one of these things, but they wind up assembling the whole thing in like 15 minutes. And so that's part of the reason why I'm actually live streaming this, is so that people can see, yes, it can take a little bit of time to assemble and build these. Ball stud goes in. So what's the most difficult thing you guys have ever worked on one of your cars? Whether it's an RC car or full scale, because I know I have a bunch of people that watch my videos for the races and stuff that I have it at my local track here. So I know that's what a lot of people are, is racers from that. And race season is coming, so there will be more of those videos. I believe there's a test and tune, I believe late March, I believe. I could be mistaken. There will be more videos of those coming soon also. So I don't know how many of you guys saw the track cleanup day that I helped with, that they actually wound up redoing a section of the wall of the track, the big track. Okay, so there is both of those. Alrighty. 2 by 6. I wonder if that's all of you guys. Eight, 7, 3. Boy, that was just popping right off the tree. Don't really want to let it do that though, because it could fly off my workbench. Okay. Soon we're going to go like that. So we're going to do one side, then the other. Sprue. I think that's another word that people use for the trees. I think S-P-R-E, I think. I'm not sure. I could be mistaken. Comment what you call those things. Parch trees or what? Comment what you call them, where you're from. Comment how you say Tamiya. That's what I want to know. Because that's how I pronounce it where I'm at. Here in the United States. I pronounce it Tamiya. So... Plus, part of the reason I'm doing this is because this is a tribute to my dad, to my late father, that I can go back and watch this and enjoy it. Really big chunk still left on there. So. Okay. That there. And 6 mil. I guess that's these little tiny dudes. Yeah. Little tiny guys. Here's another trick. If you have a magnet, this I actually pulled out of something like some other kind of tool. I have different size ones. Put it on the shaft of your screwdriver, and it will magnetize it so that it will hold screws for you. You can try kind of swiping the magnet across, but that doesn't necessarily always hold. Okay, and that little dimple that's on there goes into a small hole that will help to line everything up correctly. So that dimple might have looked like a little pain in the butt, but it actually helped to make it so that that black piece kind of helped to line up correctly. And so in turn, it made it easier to go together. And that's why you work on a surface that won't allow the screws to roll around. Come on, booger. So how these go together, I have actually never seen on another RC car. Is 3 screws go through the arm, and then the screws actually attach to the metal piece that I put underneath the ball stud. And so it kind of holds it all that way. What a play in there, though. I hope that's normal. Kind of a neat way, though, to do it, because now all of them nowadays, it's just a big kind of nut that goes in and holds it. Forget what it's called. My Maxes have it, and the Revos have it on its suspension. I know that. Make sure they're all tight. Seems like a lot of play in there. I hope there's something later on that can tighten that up. Find out. So there is one of them. So it's all attached together. So we'll set it aside. And we'll do the other one now. That way. Sometimes it's easier to stick the screw in the hole instead of sticking it onto the screwdriver. If the screw can go in far enough to kind of be held in place, and that's usually when it's easier that way. Plus my big hands trying to do this. And I might go back and take these screws out one at a time and put some thread lock on them, because they are going into metal, and so to help reduce the likelihood of them backing out down the road, wouldn't be a bad idea to do that. If you have nails, if your nails aren't trimmed all the way down, it can help make it a little bit easier, because then you can kind of use them as kind of big tweezers. precise. Gotta be lined up pretty good, otherwise you can miss it. You know, it's kind of funny. This has actually been pretty easy. When I first looked at the directions, my first thought was, oh boy. Thinking that it was going to be really difficult, but it's not. Okay, now the other thing that mentions in this step is those steering tie rod guard. So I'll be curious to see how this works after it's assembled. A little bit bigger screwdriver gives a little bit better leverage. Come on. Down there. There. I don't know. We'll see as we go. You guys will learn, find out while I'm doing it. So, right along with me. Alright, so there is both of those. Alright, and 2 countersunk screws. There's actually an additional one that goes down through the bottom. To kind of help to attach that metal piece into the arm a little bit more. Nice and smooth. I think my suspension's a little worn. Not really. Okay, let's see to use these. I'm guessing. So these are for a sway bar. I don't know that I'm actually going to put it in, just because I think that was one of the things that they did for the remake. And since I'm doing this in honor of my dad, I don't plan on running it a terrible lot. Then I'm not going to really worry about the performance. But it's saying to have these little pins out 10 millimeters. So I am going to go ahead and do that and have these ready. Actually, looking at it, I do actually need to put these in. Ooh, not much. So I think I will probably go ahead and put these in, but I might not use them. Because I did the 2 screws that went through the bottom to help hold that metal piece in, and these are supposed to go through the top to hold the top ones. So that's probably going to be the only real reason why I will install these. But I don't know, I might drive it, might not like it, so I might go ahead and throw it in. Because it does have a sway bar for it. There's no adjustment or anything that I know of for it. There's that one. There's that one. Oh, I need the ball ends. Teams, I guess that's you. And again, using smooth pliers, so try not to scratch anything. Come on, booger. I don't know why I'm working on this, and all of a sudden I just had a thought of the Lilo and Stitch cartoon. Thanks, hun. I watch that with my wife to kind of have something funny to watch at night. We got Disney Plus and that, so I watch different random things on there. Okay, woohoo! So now we get to attach some arms to it. So I'm going to see what. Oh, the next part is assembling the shocks. So putting all this stuff back in section B for now. And I'll wind up putting all these little things into a pill bottle so that when I'm done assembling for today, that I don't lose anything. All right, so these 4 pins, and I think it's going to be pretty obvious. That one goes there. This one's going to come here. So we'll see. I'm going to put these in, but I'm not going to do them tight yet. Go ahead and screw them in, because one of the ways to make sure that the suspension is set up properly and that there's nothing binding is you take it, and if it can drop under its own weight, then you're golden. If it kind of hangs anywhere, then check the sides of these and inside the arms to make sure there's no burrs or that they're clean also. That's actually another tip. If you get cheap Q-tips, you can use them and put them through to help clean them. If they are really tight and doing that does not help to clean them, get a drill bit and match it to the size of your pin. This one's actually a bit small, but match it to the size of the pin. Not the right one. And actually it's too big. Put it through just by hand. This one's too small, so it doesn't actually do it. But put it through by hand and just work it back and forth to kind of clean up the inside of the holes, so that then the pin can get through there and not have anything binding or causing the issue with it. With this being new, I wouldn't expect to have any issues. But if you're doing maintenance on one, that's a good thing to do. I do that almost all the time on mine just to make sure that they are free running without any kind of issues. Okay. You can see they both drop nice and free. Alright, so now we do the suspension. Working on the almighty shocks. So using those. I'm seeing shock pistons in here. So there, I knew it was around here somewhere. So hopefully most everything I should need will be in this baggie. Double check nothing is stuck in your bags either, because I've seen that issue come up occasionally where there's a little tiny O-ring or something that's stuck in the bottom of the bag. Then you go to throw it away and oops. I swear, whoever came up with these, I want to give you a knuckle sandwich. I know they're handy, but they are the littlest pains in the butt. And because they get lost so easy, I went and I bought a set of them just so I'd have backups. If Fortunately, I haven't had to use too many of them, so that's been kind of nice. So, all right. All three of those are the same. Ooh, hello. Little one that almost got away. All right. So, we are going to need shock bodies. Bottom shock cap. This sucks. I wish there wasn't all the copyright stuff on YouTube because I'd love to be able to play music, but go blame YouTube. I'm not an audiophile or anything like that, but I do strongly believe that listening to music can help people to work better. I know that listening to music makes cleaning the house a lot easier to do. tell me it doesn't. So we have a nice big stereo that we can crank up and listen to while we're cleaning. Okay, so there's those. Alright, you guys do have individual numbers. 5. Alrighty. So X1. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is do the bottom end of the shock. And so for that, shocks can be a pain in the rear. But if you take your time, then you can generally do pretty good and don't have to worry about it. So this is so small that I can barely hold the darn thing. So I'm using my smooth pliers to hold it so that I can try to clean it up. Yes, I do have actual nail files. Those. All right, now something that I am going to do from my experience building shocks, and this is just kind of a tip for you. These open. I got this stuff. It's Don't know if you can see that, but it's team associated green slime is what it's called. So I'm hoping that you can kind of see that. But it's intentionally intended for building shocks. So, all right. So the first thing is going to be rubber O-ring. So we're going to squeeze some of our green slime in. The green slime, basically, it helps to keep the O-rings and that lubricated, and it helps to also make it so that they don't like dry out and then hang when they're not being used. So you just put some of it in, put the washers and that in. So all right. A bunch squeezed through, but that's okay because it's a lubricant, so it won't hurt it to be in there. Do that. These little boogers are a pain in the butt. This whole thing, these little boogers have been the biggest pain in the butt. Only for the fact that they're so small. If it wasn't for that, it wouldn't be no big deal to me. But kind of a good idea, a good suggestion when you're doing shocks. Make sure that everything is smooth. Because if they're not smooth, then it can bind up and cause issues later on. Keep on having hair. Yes, I have a dog that sheds really bad, but it's not like she's been up on my workbench. Why is my phone? My phone looked like it was going weird, having focusing issues, and then it stopped. Oop. Good. And squish through the inside again, so that's okay. That's what I want. And I've actually had this bottle of the green slime for a few years, actually. So one little bottle will last a surprising amount of time. I've probably rebuilt a couple dozen shocks. I mean, Revo has 4. Each of the Maxes have 8 each. The Slash has 4. The Bronco has 4. The Associated SC10 4x4 has 4. So do you guys like this type of video, or just kind of me babbling on to myself since there's nobody home? Three little shocks, or shock bodies, with bottom ends built. All right. And so now, all right, so all 3 of the shock shafts on this are all the same. So it looks like there's going to be some kind of other adjustments that are put into them for making them the correct length for front and rear. Because most of them nowadays have different lengths, front and rear. Okay, so X. The shock pistons are a very definite important one to make sure that the edges are smooth, because in a lot of cases they are rubbing against the inside of the shock body. And so to make sure there's no additional or unwanted friction, you got to make sure that they're nice, really nice and smooth. These gosh forsaken evil little boogers. See if they're going to cooperate with me today. Although I will admit that when it comes to how the shock piston is attached, I think I do prefer these clips, just because they are much less likely to come off, I think. The SC10 4x4 that I have, it has shocks that the piston is actually screwed onto the end of the shaft. And I've actually had several situations, several times, where that shock piston has, the screw for it has come undone. And so then the shock shaft just whoop, pulls right out from the bottom of the shock. So way. Now these shock pistons, they do not look like they are directional. Sometimes some of them will be, and so you kind of have to look to see, make sure they're getting installed the correct way. So I hate these boogers. I'm not going to stick them into the shock bodies yet, just because there's spacers or collars that go on to the shock shaft to shorten it, how much throw it has. And so I still have to put those in. Something else, if you look really close, I doubt the video would be able to pick it up, but if you look really close at C-clips or E-clips, they'll have one side that's kind of rounded, and then the other side is more squared. I always try to put the rounded side against whatever I'm building so it has a little bit softer contact. I don't know that it really makes a difference, but that is how I do it. If somebody knows for sure whether that makes any difference or if I'm just wasting time trying to do that. I could see that possibly mattering. Is that a word? Mattering? I can see that possibly being of some importance in some situations, some things, but other things I don't know that it would really matter or mean anything. But that's how I've always done them, and I honestly rarely ever have issues with the clips. In most cases, as long as they don't go flying off into who knows where, then they don't. Honestly, as I'm trying to say this, second one went just fine. Get in there. Son of a bitch. That one. Oh, I managed to find it. Oh. As I heard it bounce over here beside me and then managed to see it. Wow. This little thing is being a booger. It's got to be the last one. Try a different pair of pliers. There we All right, so 3 shock shafts finally done. Dang little boogers. Okay. 4x6mm tube. I'm curious if that's what you guys are. Okay. So I'm assuming it's these brass tubes. 2 of them are going on for the front shock. Wow, that one does not get much travel at all, does it? Thankfully, with suspensions, you can commonly go and adjust them to your liking. So I might do that. Might give this a little bit more suspension travel. Okay, rear shocks. Now, if these are kind of snug, because the rubber washers inside here can be kind of compressed to create a tighter fit, if you loosen them up a little bit and you're putting the shaft through, it can take some of the pressure off so that the shafts will slide through easier and not be as likely to possibly tear or damage those rubber shafts or the rubber seals. That one. Shoot through. And I'm just taking the green slime that kind of squeezes out. I'm trying to get it pushed back in there. There we go. Okay. What's that? Okay. So now, I believe it's saying another. I can't tell if it's a washer or if it's a rubber seal, one of these. I think because it's saying BB, I'm going to think that it's going to be bag B, because I've noticed that a lot of the stuff will have a couple letters like BA, BB, and so I'm thinking that the first letter when it's the 2 of them is the bag, All right. So if I pull these up, you can actually see that one of them is shorter. That's actually going to be the front one. So, bag A9. I'm curious how this all goes together. That's having me put some lock nuts on the end of these. So I'm going to be curious to see if those stay on or if they're going to come back off. They're just to hold the shock together in the meantime, or what? All right. So there's that. So now filling the shocks. And I am going to go ahead and use the actual Tamiya. It's already open. Shock fluid. And another little tip when you're building your shocks, another peel bottle. Because then after you fill them, you can put your shock in there and it'll help to keep it upright so that it doesn't tip over and it can let all the bubbles out. But the biggest thing with the shocks is just to take your time, go slow, cycle them very, very, very slow so that the bubbles can come out. And then keep adding fluid. Okay, so that one looks pretty good. Need a smaller pill bottle to keep it more upright. And I do actually have a selection of shock oil so that I can change the dampening effect that Mercies have. It's almost kind of mesmerizing to me watching all the bubbles come so slowly up to the top. But I was running in Reno one time at Whippet RC now is what it's called. And there's a gentleman there that he actually was a professional sponsored racer. I think Tekin was one that sponsored him, among some others. And so he'd give advice on different tips and tricks and stuff to try to do a little bit better on the track and that. And I was running the SC10 4x4, and one of the shocks came apart. The shaft came off of it, like what I mentioned earlier. And so I had to go and I had to rebuild the shock because I had to reattach the shock shaft back onto it. And so I had done it. And then just out of curiosity, I went and I took it and I asked him, hey, what do you think of these? And he came back and he asked me if I'd had experience doing it. And I said, well, I'd just do it for myself. And he told me that he wouldn't mind me doing it for him professionally. That I did that good building the shocks. So, and the biggest thing is just take your time when you're doing it. Don't rush it. Because when you rush is when you make mistakes. And that's when the job doesn't get done right. Now, I don't know if you saw, but I have all the shocks standing up and I've just set them all aside. And I'm going to let them sit there for a few minutes so that more of the air bubbles can come to the surface and get out of the shock. So it'll give better, more consistent performance. So yeah, okay. So now I've got all those. These are looking pretty good. Alright. That's the shorty one. So last thing I'm going to do, and this is where it can kind of get messy, but this is in part where it makes it such a good job. Shock shaft down, or not long, but shock shaft down. So it's got all the fluid that it can pulled up inside. Cycle it the last few times to make sure there's no air, no more air. So I'm going to take it. This is the rubber bladder or diaphragm that goes inside. In this case, going to stick it on, gently push down, go to put the cap on, and you're going to make sure to cycle the shock some with the cap on slowly, but make sure the shaft is pushed in as you're tightening the cap down. And see how there's just that hair bit of movement? That's all you want. And so now it is nice and smooth and ready to go. There will be some of the oil that will kind of spill. That's normal. It's going to happen. But it's making sure that it's going to be completely full so that it will act and operate as good and as best as it needs to. So, diaphragm on, lid on, loose, shock shaft in, hold shock shaft in, and screw cap tight. A little bit will drain out, but that's okay. You see there, it's coming out more than what I want it to. So back the lid off, push it down. Back the lid off almost all the way so that it can kind of burp out any air. That was not wanting to cooperate quite right. There we go. That's what I wanted. Okay, so what I had to do with these, because the bladder diaphragm, because this doesn't actually go into and stay in the lid. That example doesn't land on my ring. You put this in on top of the shock. See, that's how I want. So nice and smooth. Put the diaphragm on, and with this type, you're going to actually kind of push the diaphragm down, push the shaft up, but then push the diaphragm down again to make sure that it's seated in there while the shaft is up. Just like that. Beautifully done shocks, in my opinion. So if you guys have any other ideas or any other ways how you do shocks, post them up. Let me know how you do them. Because a lot of people hate doing shocks. I don't really mind them. As long as they go right, then I kind of enjoy doing them because it's nice because you can quickly see how good of a job you're doing. All right. So next is the springs. Woohoo! All right. So these look like they're kind of all the same length. But we are going to be using those. So the shock cup in these is actually integrated into the end. So a lot of these, they'll have one of these things that screws onto the end of the shaft, and then there's a shock cup that's just this section that would clip on to kind of finalize, hold the spring in. These are different in that it's all one piece, and so that was actually why they had us put this nut on to help us to be able to screw the shaft into here. So clean these up a bit. Looks like it's just going to be drop the spring, and that's going to make this one tricky. So I'm kind of cheating, and I'm using a little wrench, which the directions do actually say to use the wrench to help with tightening these on, but I'm actually using the wrench to hold the spring down while I go and screw on the end. Just like that. So spring on. Wrench on to help. Any of you that are full size 1-to-1 scale mechanic guys, you know how this goes. So I have the wrench on the nut to hold it completely down so I can screw this on. So the wrench is actually under pressure on there. So if you've ever done any suspension work on full size cars and dealt with a full size car spring, yeah, you know that's never fun. Nice and smooth. Spring on. Wrench on. That was actually surprisingly easy. I thought it would be trickier. So there are those. All right. Those. Guessing it's those, but I'm gonna double check, make sure. All right. Actually, So the next step, I'm trying to kind of gather all the screws for it, is going to be a couple of things. Little tiny thing. Smallest part this whole car so far. Goes in there. Are these collars? And then they go onto the sway bar. Hopefully. Come on. It's a tight fit. Doesn't want to go on. There we go. I wonder if there's still kind of a coating on this from the manufacturer process. So it kind of slides through the machines easier. So, okay. All right. So, one is the shorter one. I don't know if you can see that there's one that is noticeably shorter than the others. That one is going to be going on the front. It's seen to put it on that direction. Those. That. Oops, there. Washer. That's not the right size washer. I have to do one side at a time. Look here. Oh, that's what those go to. Okay. So those we will be using. Those washers are not the right size. I just kind of go over these screws. That one is. I only have one. It looks like it would be this size, but the center hole is not big enough. And I am not seeing them. Now look all over, make sure it hasn't been pulled out, and I think I'm missing a couple washers. Those screws will go in nicely. There's just not a big enough washer. So this is why you keep all the old screws and all the old ones. Hopes that you might have one that'll work. Sweet. And I actually had two that are the exact size I need. And the brass piece or the gold colored piece that is going inside the shock, that is to help to limit how far the screw can go down so that it won't cause drag on there. That little piece there. So it goes on so that it doesn't get crushed and then hang up. This is rather interesting with the mono shock on this because you try to move it, but the movement of the other side affects what you're doing on this side. So it's a little trickier. There. So now the front has a very strange, it has functioning suspension. All right. So the next thing is attaching the sway bar. Sway bar is going to go in like that. And these screws with the really, really thick washers goes through, and they actually are going to tie down the front of the upper chassis shell. That. And these lock collars are actually on here to help to keep the sway bar aligned in the center. So that it stays aligned through the ends. So now you can kind of see how a sway bar works. So you go into a corner, the whole car will try to twist. The sway bar makes it so that the side that's trying to twist will transfer some of that twisting motion to the other side to help keep the whole car flat. You can see I'm only doing the one side, and it's making this side move. Hopefully you can kind of see that okay. So that it can still work normal, like the sway bar is not even there, when it's just straight. So alright, I think what we're going to do with this one is we're going to finish up the front end, and then I think we're going to call it for today. And so next thing, flip it over, is going to be attaching the steering rods to the steering links that are here. Like that. There, so now if I were to plug it in and turn it on, there is functioning steering. And you can actually kind of see the servo saver down in there kind of flex a little bit. The servo doesn't want to let it move. So and the final thing, bag A, 3x8. Just in case. Those are 10. Those are 8. So yeah, I need the shorties. All right. And to finish up the front end, we get to throw on the bumper. On just like that. No extra washers or anything. And I made a boo-boo. I didn't clean off some stuff off there. Much better. All right, so now I think the front end could be mostly done now. There's a little bit of play in there, but this is a product of the 80s. But it's getting there, taking it nice and slow. So, but that's what we are going to do today. And starting out the next video, we are going to be working on the rear end. We're going to be setting up the gearbox and assembling the transmission with the built-in differential inside of it. And after that would be the rear suspension arms, and that, the hub carriers, and then mounting the shocks and the motor and all that. So right now we just finished step 18 with putting the bumper on and connecting those links in. That finishes up step 18, and so we will be picking up at step 19. So until then, we will see you guys next time. Hi, Mom. Late timing on getting in here to see. But you can see now where it's at. Getting the rest of the front suspension. So all right, well, until next time.